The stagecoach lurched violently over another rut in the dusty Colorado road, and Jessica Marlowe gripped the worn leather seat beneath her, wondering if this journey to her new husband would be the death of her before she ever reached Colorado City. It was August 1876, and the heat bore down mercilessly through the canvas covering of the coach. Jessica had been traveling for 3 weeks now, leaving behind her aunt's house in Philadelphia for a future she had arranged through carefully written letters with a man she had never met. At 22 years old, she was considered dangerously close to spinsterhood by her family's standards, and when Mr. Frederick Dalton had responded to her advertisement seeking marriage, her aunt had practically pushed her out the door with blessings and relief. The letters Mr. Dalton had sent were proper and formal, outlining his expectations for a wife. She would manage his household, attend church every Sunday, refrain from speaking to other men without his permission, dress modestly at all times, and never question his decisions. The list had been long and detailed, covering everything from meal times to appropriate topics of conversation. Jessica had read those letters with a growing sense of dread, but what choice did she have? Her parents were dead, her aunt was tired of housing her, and teaching positions for unmarried women were scarce and paid barely enough to survive. So she had agreed, packed her few belongings, and boarded the first of many coaches that would take her west to Colorado Territory. The stagecoach finally rolled to a stop in Colorado City, just as the sun was beginning its descent toward the mountains. Jessica stepped down onto the dusty Main Street, her legs unsteady after so many days of travel. The town was smaller than she had imagined, just a collection of wooden buildings lining a single dirt road, with the magnificent Rocky Mountains rising in the distance like sentinels guarding the frontier. Miss Marlowe. A thin man with a severe face and dark suit approached her. "I am Frederick Dalton." Jessica forced a smile and extended her hand, which he briefly shook with cold fingers. "Mr. Dalton, I am pleased to finally meet you. Your trunk will be delivered to my home. Come along. We have much to discuss before the wedding tomorrow." He turned and walked away without waiting to see if she followed. Jessica hurried after him, her travel-worn skirts dragging through the dust. They walked past a saloon from which raucous laughter spilled, a general store, a blacksmith shop, and a small church before turning onto a side street where several neat houses stood. Mr. Dalton's home was a small wooden structure, painfully tidy but lacking any warmth or personality. He led her inside to a sparse parlor and gestured for her to sit on a hard-backed chair. "Now then," he said, remaining standing so that he looked down at her, "I trust you received my letters outlining my expectations." "Yes, sir." "Good. I run a strict household, Miss Marlowe." My first wife, God rest her soul, understood the importance of obedience and order. I expect the same from you. You will rise at 5 each morning to prepare breakfast. You will not leave the house without my permission. You will speak only when spoken to when we have company. You will. A knock at the door interrupted his litany. Mr. Dalton's face reddened with irritation. "I am not expecting anyone. Wait here." He strode to the door and opened it. Jessica could hear a deep male voice, warm and apologetic. "Sorry to disturb you, Dalton." "I am looking for a Miss Jessica Marlowe. The stagecoach driver said she might be here." "What business do you have with my fiancée?" Mr. Dalton's voice was sharp with suspicion. "There was a telegram that arrived for her just after the stage left." "I run the telegraph office and I thought it might be important." Jessica stood and moved toward the door, curious despite herself. Mr. Dalton blocked her path. "I will take it," he said, reaching for the telegram. "Respectfully, sir, I was instructed to deliver it into the lady's hands directly." The voice was polite but firm, Mr. Dalton's jaw tightened, but he stepped aside. Jessica found herself facing a man who looked nothing like her stern fiancé. He was tall, with sun-darkened skin and light brown hair that touched his collar. He wore dusty range clothes, leather chaps over worn denim pants, and a blue shirt with the sleeves rolled up to reveal tanned forearms. His eyes were a striking hazel color, and they looked at her with a directness that was somehow both respectful and assessing. "Miss Marlowe, I am Quinn Vance. This arrived for you." He held out the telegram, and when she took it, their fingers briefly touched. His hands were calloused and warm. "Thank you, Mr. Vance. I will leave you to your evening, madam. Welcome to Colorado City." He tipped his hat to her, nodded coolly to Mr. Dalton, and walked back down the path. Jessica opened the telegram with trembling fingers. It was from her aunt's neighbor in Philadelphia. "Stop your aunt passed suddenly stop funeral held stop no need to return stop. She wanted you to know she loved you stop." The words blurred as tears filled Jessica's eyes. Her aunt had been difficult and critical, but she had been the last family Jessica had in the world. Now she was truly alone. "What is it?" Mr. Dalton asked impatiently. "My aunt has died." "I see. That is unfortunate. However, the wedding will proceed as planned tomorrow. There is no point in postponing. You have nowhere else to go after all." His words were true but cruel. Jessica folded the telegram carefully, using the moment to compose herself. She would not cry in front of this cold man. "Now, as I was saying," Mr. Dalton continued as if nothing had happened, "you will maintain this house to my standards. I have prepared a list of rules that you will follow. Any deviation will result in punishment. You understand? Punishment?" Jessica's voice was barely a whisper. "A wife must be corrected when she errs. It is biblical and proper. My first wife understood this." Something in Jessica's chest tightened with fear. She had known this marriage would be one of convenience rather than affection, but she had not expected to feel like a prisoner before the vows were even spoken. "I have arranged for you to stay with Mrs. Henderson tonight. It would not be proper for you to remain here before the wedding. Come, I will walk you there." Mrs. Henderson was a kindly older woman who clucked sympathetically over Jessica's loss and showed her to a small but comfortable room. Jessica lay awake most of the night, staring at the ceiling and wondering if she had made a terrible mistake. But what choice did she have now? She had no money for the journey back east, no home to return to, and no prospects. In the morning, she would marry Frederick Dalton and try to make the best of the life she had chosen. The wedding was a brief, joyless affair held in the small church with only Mrs. Henderson and a few of Mr. Dalton's business associates in attendance. The minister spoke the words. Jessica repeated her vows in a voice that shook despite her efforts to sound steady, and then it was done. She was Mrs. Frederick Dalton. The wedding breakfast was held at Mr. Dalton's home, where Jessica served coffee and cake to the handful of guests, while her new husband outlined his business plans to the other men. No one spoke to her directly except to compliment Mr. Dalton on finding such a quiet, modest wife. When the last guest had left, Mr. Dalton handed Jessica a piece of paper. "Here is your schedule and the household rules. Memorize them. I will quiz you this evening." Jessica took the paper and read through it with growing dismay. Every hour of her day was accounted for, every task outlined in minute detail. She was not to read novels, as they filled women's heads with foolish notions. She was not to sing, as it was frivolous. She was not to rearrange any furniture or decoration without his approval. She was not to engage in conversation with men for any reason. "I have business in town," Mr. Dalton said, putting on his hat. "I will return at precisely 6 o'clock. Dinner will be ready at that time. Do not disappoint me on your first day." He left, and Jessica stood in the silent house, feeling the walls close in around her. She moved through the kitchen, finding it well stocked but organized in a way that seemed designed to be as inconvenient as possible. She began preparing dinner, working from the recipes Mrs. Henderson had kindly written out for her, trying not to think about the years stretching ahead of her in this cold, cheerless place. 3 days passed in a blur of work and anxiety. Mr. Dalton found fault with everything. The coffee was too weak, then too strong. The eggs were overdone. She had folded his shirts incorrectly. She had taken too long to answer when he spoke to her. Each criticism was delivered in the same cold, cutting tone, and Jessica found herself growing smaller and quieter, trying desperately to avoid his displeasure. On the 4th day, Mr. Dalton left early for a business trip to Denver. He would be gone for 3 days, he informed her, and he expected the house to be spotless upon his return. He had arranged for Mrs. Henderson to check on her daily to ensure she was following her schedule. After he left, Jessica sat at the kitchen table and allowed herself to cry for the first time since the wedding. What had she done? She was trapped in a loveless marriage with a man who treated her like a servant, or worse, like a possession to be controlled and corrected. She had thought she was prepared for a marriage of convenience, but she had not imagined it would feel like this, like being buried alive. A knock at the door startled her. She quickly dried her eyes and went to answer it, expecting Mrs. Henderson. Instead, Quinn Vance stood on the doorstep, holding a package wrapped in brown paper. "Mrs. Dalton," he said, tipping his hat. "This arrived for your husband at the telegraph office. It is marked urgent, and since I was riding this direction anyway, I thought I would deliver it." "Thank you, Mr. Vance. That is very kind." Jessica took the package, careful not to let their hands touch this time. He did not leave immediately. Instead, he looked at her with those direct hazel eyes, and Jessica had the uncomfortable feeling that he could see the tear stains she had tried to hide. "Are you all right, madam?" His voice was gentle, concerned. "Of course. Why would you ask? No reason." "It is just that you look like you have not been sleeping well." Jessica stiffened. "I am fine, Mr. Vance. Thank you for your concern." He nodded slowly, but something in his expression told her he did not believe her. "If you ever need anything, madam, the telegraph office is right on Main Street. I am there most days, and I also work a small ranch a few miles north of town." "That is very kind, but I cannot imagine what I would need." "No, madam, I suppose not. Good day to you." He tipped his hat again and walked back to where a beautiful buckskin horse waited, tied to the fence. Jessica watched him ride away, sitting easy in the saddle with the grace of a man who had spent his life on horseback. Then she closed the door firmly and returned to her work. She could not afford to be seen talking with another man, even in innocence. Mr. Dalton would find out somehow, and she dreaded to think what his punishment would be. Mrs. Henderson arrived an hour later and was surprised to find Jessica had already completed most of the day's tasks. "My dear, you do not need to work yourself to exhaustion," the older woman said kindly. "Mr. Dalton is very particular, I know, but you must take time to rest." "I want everything to be perfect when he returns," Jessica said quietly. Mrs. Henderson's expression grew sad. "You are afraid of him." It was not a question. Jessica could not bring herself to deny it. "His first wife, Martha, she was afraid too," Mrs. Henderson continued. "That poor girl walked on eggshells every day of her marriage. When she died in childbirth 2 years ago, I confess I thought it might have been a mercy for her." Jessica felt ice in her veins. "He never mentioned she died in childbirth." "No, I suppose he would not. The baby died too, a little girl. Martha was so weak, you see. The pregnancy was hard on her and she did not have the strength." Mrs. Henderson reached out and took Jessica's hand. "You are young and healthy, my dear. You will be fine when the time comes, But please do not let him break your spirit before then. After Mrs. Henderson left, Jessica could not shake the feeling of dread that had settled over her. She had bound herself to a man who ruled through fear and criticism, and there was no escape. In 1876, a woman could not simply leave her husband. She had no legal rights, no way to support herself, nowhere to go. She had made her choice, and now she had to live with it. That evening, restless and unable to bear the confines of the house any longer, Jessica decided to take a walk. Mr. Dalton had forbidden her from leaving the house without permission, but he was in Denver, and surely a short walk to clear her head would be acceptable. She put on her bonnet and shawl and stepped out into the cooling evening air. She walked toward the center of town, keeping to the quieter streets, breathing in the scent of pine from the mountains and feeling the tension in her shoulders begin to ease. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink that took her breath away. In Philadelphia, she had rarely seen such sunsets. Here in Colorado territory, the sky seemed endless. She was so absorbed in watching the colors that she did not notice the three men until they blocked her path. "Well, what do we have here?" one of them said, his breath reeking of whiskey. "Pretty little thing, all alone." Jessica's heart began to pound. She tried to step around them, but they moved to block her way. "Please let me pass," she said, keeping her voice as steady as she could. "What's your hurry, darling? Stay and talk with us a while." One of them reached for her arm, and Jessica jerked back. She opened her mouth to call for help, but before she could make a sound, a familiar voice cut through the evening air. "The lady asked you to let her pass." Quinn Vance stood a few yards away, his stance relaxed but his eyes hard as flint. He had his hand resting casually on the gun at his hip. "This is not your business, Vance," one of the men said, but his bravado was weakening. "I am making it my business. Now step aside." The three men looked at each other, weighing their options. Whatever they saw in Quinn's expression convinced them not to press their luck. They moved aside, muttering curses, and stumbled off toward the saloon. Quinn walked to Jessica's side. "Are you hurt, madam?" "No, no, I am fine. Thank you, Mr. Vance. I should not have been out alone." "It was foolish of me." "You have every right to walk where you please," he said firmly. "Those men were drunk and stupid. That is not your fault." He looked around at the growing darkness. "Let me walk you home. It is not safe for anyone to be out alone after dark, man or woman." Jessica knew she should refuse, but she was shaking from the encounter and grateful for his presence. "Thank you." They walked in silence for a few moments, Quinn adjusting his longer stride to match her pace. "How are you finding Colorado City, Mrs. Dalton?" he asked. "It is very different from Philadelphia." "I imagine so. I have never been east of Kansas myself. I grew up in Texas, came up here 5 years ago looking for land to ranch." "Do you enjoy ranching?" "I do. It is hard work, but honest work. A man is free out there, answers to no one but himself and the land." He glanced at her. "I run the telegraph office to keep money coming in while I build up my herd, but my heart is out there with the cattle and horses." Jessica heard the passion in his voice and felt a pang of envy. "What must it be like to love what you did, to feel free rather than trapped?" They reached Mr. Dalton's house too quickly. Jessica paused at the gate. "Thank you again, Mr. Vance. I am very grateful for your help." "It was my pleasure, madam." He tipped his hat, but before he turned to leave, he said, "Mrs. Dalton, if you ever need help with anything, anything at all, please do not hesitate to ask. I know we are not well acquainted, but I would consider it an honor to assist you in any way I can." Jessica met his eyes and saw only sincerity there. "You are very kind. Good evening." She went inside and closed the door, leaning against it as her heart continued to race. But now she could not tell if it was from the frightening encounter with the drunk men, or from the warmth she had felt standing next to Quinn Vance, talking with him as if she were a real person rather than a possession to be controlled. When Mr. Dalton returned from Denver 3 days later, he inspected the house with his usual critical eye but could find nothing to fault. Jessica served dinner in silence, responding only when he spoke directly to her. "I saw Mrs. Henderson in town," he said as he cut his meat with precise movements. "She tells me you were very diligent in my absence. I tried to follow your instructions exactly." "Good. That is what I expect." He chewed thoughtfully, then said, "However, Mr. Granger at the general store mentioned seeing you walking alone 4 evenings ago. Is this true?" Jessica's blood ran cold. "I took a brief walk. I needed some air." Mr. Dalton set down his fork carefully. "Did I not make it clear that you are not to leave this house without my permission?" "Yes, but I did not think." "That is correct. You did not think. You did not obey." He stood up from the table. "Go to the bedroom and wait for me there." "Please, Mr. Dalton, I am sorry." "It will not happen again." "No, it will not, because you will learn tonight what happens when you disobey me." Jessica fled to the bedroom, her whole body trembling. She waited there for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes before Mr. Dalton entered, holding a leather strap. "Please," she whispered. "Please do not." "A wife must be corrected," he said coldly. "It is for your own good." What followed was the most humiliating and painful experience of Jessica's life. When it was over and Mr. Dalton had left her alone, she curled up on the bed and wept silently into her pillow. This was her life now. This was all it would ever be. The next morning, Jessica could barely move without pain. She forced herself through her tasks, knowing that any sign of defiance or weakness would only make things worse. Mr. Dalton was coldly polite at breakfast, as if nothing had happened. Over the following weeks, Jessica learned to make herself invisible. She spoke only when necessary, never met Mr. Dalton's eyes, and followed every rule precisely. The light that had once shone in her eyes dimmed a little more each day. One afternoon in late September, she was in the general store purchasing supplies from the list Mr. Dalton had provided when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Mrs. Dalton. Good afternoon." She turned to find Quinn Vance standing there, holding a sack of grain over one shoulder as easily as if it weighed nothing. "Good afternoon, Mr. Vance," she said quietly, keeping her eyes down. "I have not seen you in town much lately. I stay close to home." He was quiet for a moment, and when Jessica risked a glance up at him, she found him studying her with an expression she could not quite read. "Would you like some help carrying your purchases?" he asked. "No, thank you, I can manage." "I am sure you can. But I am heading in that direction anyway, and it would be no trouble." Jessica wanted to say yes. She wanted to talk to someone, anyone, who looked at her like she was a person worthy of respect rather than a thing to be managed. But she remembered Mr. Dalton's anger, remembered the strap, and shook her head. "Thank you, but no, my husband would not approve." Something flickered in Quinn's eyes. Anger, perhaps, or pity. Jessica could not bear to see either. "As you wish, madam. Take care of yourself." He tipped his hat and left the store. Jessica finished her shopping and walked home with her heavy basket, feeling more alone than ever. That evening, Mr. Dalton announced that they would be attending a church social on Saturday. "It is important that people see us as a respectable married couple," he said. "You will wear your gray dress, the one with the high collar. You will not speak unless someone addresses you directly, and then you will keep your answers brief. You will remain by my side at all times. Is that clear?" "Yes, sir." Saturday arrived, and Jessica dressed carefully in the gray dress, which was her plainest and most modest garment. She pinned her dark hair back severely and looked at herself in the mirror. She barely recognized the pale, subdued woman looking back at her. The church social was held in the churchyard, with tables of food set up under the trees and people gathered in small groups, talking and laughing. It was a beautiful autumn day, the leaves just beginning to turn gold on the aspens higher in the mountains. Jessica stood silently beside Mr. Dalton as he conversed with other men about business and politics. The women occasionally smiled at her, but none approached to talk. They knew Frederick Dalton's reputation, knew that he preferred his wife to be seen and not heard. After an hour, Mr. Dalton was called away to look at something with one of his business associates. "Wait here," he commanded Jessica. "Do not move from this spot." Jessica nodded and stood beneath a large cottonwood tree, watching the other women chat and laugh together, watching children play, feeling like a ghost observing life from the outside. Mrs. Dalton. She turned to find Quinn Vance approaching. He looked different today, wearing a clean white shirt and dark vest instead of his usual range clothes, his hair freshly trimmed. Several young women watched him walk past with obvious interest. "Mr. Vance." "It is a fine day," he said, stopping a respectful distance from her. "Are you enjoying the social?" "It is very pleasant," Jessica said carefully, aware of eyes watching them. "I noticed you standing alone. Would you care for some lemonade? It is quite good." Jessica glanced in the direction Mr. Dalton had gone. She could not see him. "I should not. My husband asked me to wait here." "I see." Quinn's jaw tightened slightly. "Forgive me for asking, Mrs. Dalton, but are you happy?" The question was so unexpected, so direct that Jessica could not form a response. Happy? She could barely remember what happiness felt like. "That is not an appropriate question, Mr. Vance," she finally said. "No, I suppose it is not. But I am going to ask you another inappropriate question, and I hope you will forgive me for it." He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "Are you safe?" Jessica felt tears prick at her eyes. She blinked them back fiercely. "I do not know what you mean." "I think you do. I have seen the way you move sometimes, like you are in pain. I have seen how quiet you have become, how you never smile anymore. I delivered a telegram to your house 2 weeks ago, and when you answered the door, there was a bruise on your wrist. I am clumsy. I bumped into the table, Jessica." It was the first time he had used her given name, and something in the way he said it with such gentle concern broke something inside her. "If you need help, I will help you. No questions asked. Just say the word." "There is nothing you can do," she whispered. "There is nothing anyone can do. I am his wife. The law gives him the right to discipline me as he sees fit. The law is wrong, perhaps, but that does not change my situation." She saw Mr. Dalton returning, his expression already darkening as he noticed her talking with Quinn. "Please go. You will only make things worse for me." Quinn followed her gaze and saw Mr. Dalton approaching. His hand instinctively moved toward his gun, then dropped. "If you change your mind, I am here. Remember that." He walked away just as Mr. Dalton reached her side. What did that man want? Mr. Dalton demanded. "He was simply being polite. He offered me some lemonade." "I saw the way he was looking at you. Did you encourage him?" "No, I barely spoke to him. We are leaving. Now." Mr. Dalton gripped her arm hard enough to bruise and marched her to their wagon. Jessica did not dare look back, but she could feel Quinn's eyes on her, watching. That night was bad. Mr. Dalton accused her of trying to attract other men, of being immodest and forward despite her plain dress and downcast eyes. Nothing she said made any difference. When he finally left her alone, Jessica lay in the darkness and thought about Quinn's question. Was she safe? No, she was not safe, and she never would be as long as she remained in this house. But what choice did she have? Women did not leave their husbands, not in 1876, not in Colorado territory where resources were scarce and survival was hard enough even with support. She had no money, no skills beyond household work, nowhere to go. She was trapped as surely as if she were in a prison cell. Days turned into weeks. October arrived, bringing cold nights and the first hints of winter. Jessica went through her daily routine mechanically, trying not to think, trying not to feel. She had learned that thinking and feeling only brought pain. Then one afternoon in mid-October, everything changed. Mr. Dalton had gone to a meeting of the town council, and Jessica was alone in the house, mending his shirts by the window where the light was good. She heard a horse approaching at a gallop, heard urgent knocking at the door. She opened it to find Quinn Vance standing there, his face grave. "Mrs. Dalton, I am sorry to bring bad news. There has been an accident." Jessica's heart seized. "What kind of accident?" "Your husband was at the council meeting when a fight broke out. Someone drew a gun. Frederick was shot." Is he alive?" "He is at Doc Miller's office. You should come." Jessica grabbed her shawl and followed Quinn to his horse. He helped her mount in front of him, and they rode quickly through town to the doctor's office. Jessica's mind was racing. If Mr. Dalton died, she would be free. The thought came unbidden and filled her with guilt. She should not wish for his death, no matter how he had treated her. Doc Miller met them at the door, his face somber. "Mrs. Dalton, I am afraid your husband has passed. The bullet struck him in the chest. There was nothing I could do." Jessica stood frozen, unable to process the words. Frederick Dalton was dead. Her husband of less than 2 months was dead. "I am very sorry for your loss," the doctor continued. "Would you like to see him?" Yes, I suppose I should." The doctor led her to a back room where Frederick Dalton's body lay on a table, covered with a white sheet. Jessica looked at his face, peaceful now in death in a way it had never been in life, and waited to feel something. Grief, loss, even relief. But there was only numbness. "The man who shot him has been arrested," Doc Miller said. "It was an accident. They were struggling over the gun when it went off, but there will be a trial." Jessica nodded mechanically. Quinn stood near the door, giving her space but remaining present. "Mrs. Dalton," the doctor said gently, "do you have family nearby? Someone who can help you through this?" "No, no one. Mrs. Henderson has offered to have you stay with her for a while. You should not be alone." Jessica allowed herself to be led out of the doctor's office and into Mrs. Henderson's care. The older woman clucked sympathetically and settled Jessica in the same guest room where she had spent the night before her wedding. That felt like a lifetime ago. Over the next few days, Jessica moved through the funeral arrangements in a daze. Mrs. Henderson handled most of the details, for which Jessica was grateful. The funeral was held on a gray Thursday afternoon with even fewer attendees than the wedding had been. Frederick Dalton had not been a well-loved man. After the funeral, Jessica returned to Mrs. Henderson's house and finally allowed herself to think about her situation. She was a widow now, with no family, very little money, and an uncertain future. Mr. Dalton had owned his house and had some savings, but Jessica did not know the details of his finances or what, if anything, would pass to her. The next morning, she was surprised by a visit from Mr. Garrett, the town's lawyer. "Mrs. Dalton," he said, removing his hat as he entered Mrs. Henderson's parlor. "I have been going through your late husband's papers. He left a will, written several years ago after his first wife's death. I see. The house and all its contents are to be sold, with the proceeds going to his brother in Kansas. He has left you a sum of $500, which he considered adequate for you to return to your family in the East. $500. It was more money than Jessica had ever had in her life, but it was not enough to live on for long. "I have no family in the East," she said quietly. "My aunt died shortly before I came here." Mr. Garrett looked uncomfortable. "I am sorry to hear that. Perhaps you could find employment as a housekeeper or companion to a respectable family. Yes, perhaps. After the lawyer left, Jessica sat with Mrs. Henderson and faced the reality of her situation. "You could stay with me for a while, dear," Mrs. Henderson offered, "at least until you decide what to do. You are very kind, but I cannot impose on you indefinitely. I need to find work." "There is not much work for women in Colorado City," Mrs. Henderson said sadly. "Teaching positions are filled, and the only other options are cooking or cleaning, which barely pays enough to cover room and board." Jessica thought about returning east, but to what? She knew no one in Philadelphia except her aunt's neighbors. And somehow, despite everything that had happened, she found she did not want to leave Colorado territory. The mountains, the endless sky, the sense of space and possibility, they called to something deep inside her. "I will figure something out," she said with more confidence than she felt. That afternoon, Quinn Vance came to call. Mrs. Henderson showed him into the parlor, then tactfully left them alone after Jessica assured her it was acceptable. "Mrs. Dalton," Quinn said, standing awkwardly with his hat in his hands, "I wanted to express my condolences and see how you are managing." "Thank you, Mr. Vance. That is very kind. I am managing as well as can be expected." "Have you made plans? For the future, I mean." Jessica appreciated his directness. "I have some money from my husband's estate, not much, but enough to live on for a few months while I look for employment." "The difficulty is finding employment that pays enough to live on." Quinn was quiet for a moment, turning his hat in his hands. Then he said, "I have a proposition for you, and I hope you will hear me out before you refuse." Jessica felt a flutter of apprehension. "What kind of proposition?" "My ranch is growing. I now have nearly 200 head of cattle and 30 horses. It is becoming too much for me to manage alone while also running the telegraph office. I need help." "I am not sure what help I could provide on a ranch, Mr. Vance. Please call me Quinn. And what I am proposing is not ranch work exactly. I need someone to manage the household side of things. Cooking, cleaning, mending, keeping accounts. The kind of work you already know how to do. I could pay you $30 a month plus room and board." $30 a month was more than she could make anywhere else, but living on a ranch with a single man would ruin her reputation entirely. "That is very generous," Jessica said carefully, "but surely you can see how inappropriate such an arrangement would be." "I have been thinking about that." "What if we were to marry?" Jessica stared at him, certain she had misheard. "I beg your pardon." Quinn sat down across from her, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees, his expression earnest. "I know this is sudden, and I know we barely know each other, but hear me out. You need security and a place to live. I need help running my ranch and managing the household. We could enter into a marriage of mutual benefit and respect. You are proposing a business arrangement. In a way, yes, but more than that. I am proposing a partnership between equals." He met her eyes directly. "Jessica, I watched what your husband did to you. I saw how he controlled and criticized and hurt you. I would never treat you that way. I believe a marriage should be a partnership where both people have a voice, where both people are free to be themselves." "I have never heard of such a marriage." "Neither have I, really. But that does not mean it cannot exist. Look, I am not a poet or a romantic. I am just a rancher trying to build a life out here. But I can promise you this. If you marry me, you will have freedom. You can come and go as you please, speak your mind, make your own choices. I will provide for you and protect you, but I will not control you. You will be my partner, not my property." Jessica felt tears welling up. "Why would you offer me this? You barely know me." "I know enough. I know you are brave enough to travel across the country to start a new life. I know you are strong enough to endure what you endured without breaking. I know you deserve better than what you have been given." He paused, a slight color rising in his cheeks. "And I will be honest with you. From the first moment I saw you stepping off that stagecoach, looking around at the mountains with wonder in your eyes, I thought you were the most beautiful woman I had ever seen." "Mr. Vance, Quinn, please." "Quinn, I cannot marry you just because you pity me or because you think I am beautiful. I do not pity you, I admire you, and I am not asking you to marry me tomorrow. Take some time. Come see the ranch, see if you think you could be happy there. If you decide you cannot, I will help you find another situation. You have my word." Jessica looked at this man who was offering her something she had never expected to have: freedom and respect. Could she trust him? Could she risk her heart and her future again so soon after escaping one terrible marriage? But what other choice did she have? And more importantly, did she want to refuse? When she looked at Quinn, she did not feel afraid. She felt something she had almost forgotten: hope. "I would like to see the ranch," she said quietly. Quinn's face lit up with a smile that transformed his features, making him look younger and somehow more vulnerable. "That is wonderful. I can bring a wagon around tomorrow morning if that suits you." Tomorrow would be fine. After Quinn left, Mrs. Henderson came back into the parlor with a knowing smile. "That is a good man, Jessica, one of the best I have known. You do not think I am being foolish, considering marriage again so soon. I think you are being practical and smart. And I think, perhaps, you might find more than just security with Quinn Vance. I have seen the way he looks at you." Jessica went to bed that night feeling something she had not felt in months: anticipation for tomorrow. Quinn arrived the next morning with a wagon pulled by 2 sturdy horses. He helped Jessica up onto the seat, and they set off north out of town. The day was crisp and clear, the kind of autumn day that made everything seem possible. "My ranch is about 5 miles from town," Quinn explained as they rode. "It is not much yet, just a small cabin and a barn, but the land is good. There is a creek that runs through the property and grazing for the cattle. I have been building it up slowly over the past 5 years. Where did you learn to ranch?" "I grew up on a ranch in Texas. My father raised cattle, and I worked with him until I was 18. Then he died, and my older brother inherited everything. We did not see eye to eye on how to run things, so I decided to strike out on my own. That must have been difficult. It was the best decision I ever made. I love Texas, but this land, these mountains, there is something about it that speaks to my soul." He glanced at her. "Do you feel it too?" "I think I do. When I first arrived and saw the mountains, I felt like I could breathe for the first time in years." They rode in comfortable silence for a while, and Jessica found herself relaxing in a way she had not been able to with Frederick. Quinn did not seem to expect her to fill every silence with conversation, or to watch every word she said. He simply accepted her presence with an ease that felt natural. The ranch appeared as they crested a small rise. The cabin was indeed small but well built, with a stone chimney and a covered porch. The barn was larger, with a corral attached. Beyond the buildings, Jessica could see cattle grazing in the distance and the glitter of a creek winding through cottonwood trees. "It is beautiful," she said, meaning it. Quinn helped her down from the wagon, and she noticed how careful he was not to hold her any longer than necessary, how he stepped back immediately to give her space. After Frederick's controlling touch, Quinn's respectful distance was a relief. He showed her around the property, pointing out where he planned to build a larger house someday, where he wanted to expand the barn, his dreams and plans for the future. Jessica found herself drawn into his vision, imagining what the ranch could become. The cabin interior was spare but clean. A large fireplace dominated one wall, with a cooking area to one side and a bed in the far corner. A table and 2 chairs sat beneath the window, and shelves held books, supplies, and a few personal items. "If you were to come here, I would build a separate room for you right away," Quinn said. "I want you to feel safe and private. This marriage, if you agree to it, would be whatever we decide it should be. I would not demand or expect anything from you that you were not willing to give." Jessica studied him carefully. "You are saying this would be a marriage in name only." "I am saying it would be a marriage of respect and choice. If in time affection grew between us, that would be wonderful. But I would never force you or pressure you. Your body is your own, Jessica. Always." It was such a radical statement, so different from everything she had been taught about a wife's duty, that Jessica almost could not process it. "Why are you different from other men?" she asked. Quinn was quiet for a moment, looking out the window at the mountains. "My mother was treated poorly by my father. He was not as bad as Frederick Dalton, but he was controlling and harsh. I watched my mother shrink and fade over the years, watched the light go out of her eyes. When she died, I think it was partly from a broken spirit as much as from illness. I swore I would never treat a woman that way. I would rather be alone my whole life than become the kind of man my father was." Jessica felt her heart soften toward this honest, thoughtful man. "I would like to accept your proposal, Quinn, but I need to be honest with you as well. I do not know if I can ever be a proper wife. Frederick, she swallowed hard. He damaged something inside me. I am not sure I can trust or feel the way a woman should." Quinn turned to face her fully, his hazel eyes intense. "Jessica, you have been hurt. That is not your fault, and it does not make you damaged. It makes you a survivor. I am not looking for a perfect wife. I am looking for a partner, someone to build a life with. Whatever you can give, that will be enough. You deserve someone who can love you. Then let us make a bargain. We will marry and be partners. We will work together to build this ranch, and we will see what grows between us over time. No expectations, no demands, just two people trying to make a good life together. What do you say?" Jessica thought about the alternative, about being alone and struggling to survive, about never feeling safe again. And she thought about the possibility of building something new with this kind, respectful man who looked at her like she mattered. "I say yes." Quinn's smile was brilliant. "You have made me very happy, Jessica. I promise you will not regret this." They were married a week later in the same church where Jessica had married Frederick, but this ceremony felt entirely different. Mrs. Henderson stood as witness along with several of Quinn's friends from town. When Quinn said his vows, he looked into Jessica's eyes with such sincerity that she almost believed in new beginnings. The day after the wedding, Quinn helped Jessica move her few belongings to the ranch. He had been true to his word, adding a small room onto the cabin with a door that locked from the inside. "This is your space," he said, showing her the room with its simple bed, dresser, and washstand. "I will never enter without your permission." Jessica was touched by his thoughtfulness. "Thank you, Quinn." Their first weeks together established a pattern that felt surprisingly natural. Quinn rose early to tend the cattle and horses, and Jessica managed the household, cooking meals and keeping the cabin clean. But unlike with Frederick, there were no rigid schedules or endless rules. If Jessica wanted to read in the afternoon, Quinn encouraged it. If she wanted to take a walk, he simply asked her to be careful and let him know which direction she was going. In the evenings, they often sat together by the fire, reading or talking. Quinn told her stories about Texas and his early days in Colorado. Jessica found herself sharing memories of her childhood before her parents died, happy times she had almost forgotten. "You have a beautiful laugh," Quinn said one evening after she had laughed at one of his stories about a particularly stubborn horse. "I have not heard it often enough." Jessica felt herself flush. "I have not had much reason to laugh lately." "Well, I intend to change that." He grinned at her, and Jessica felt a flutter in her chest that she had not felt in a very long time. As autumn deepened into winter, Jessica found herself growing more comfortable with Quinn and with her new life. She discovered that she loved the ranch, loved the rhythm of the days and the beauty of the land. She loved watching Quinn work with the horses, admired his skill and patience with the animals. One snowy December morning, Jessica was in the barn gathering eggs when she heard Quinn's voice raised in frustration. She went to investigate and found him trying to calm a young mare who had gotten tangled in some fence wire. "Easy, girl, easy," Quinn was saying, but the mare was panicking, making the situation worse. "Can I help?" Jessica asked. "If you could just talk to her, keep her calm while I cut the wire, that would be helpful." Jessica approached the frightened horse slowly, speaking in a soft, soothing voice. To her surprise, the mare calmed almost immediately, focusing on Jessica rather than the wire. Quinn worked quickly, cutting away the tangle, and soon the mare was free with only minor scratches. "You have a gift with horses," Quinn said, leading the mare back to her stall. "She responded to you better than she does to me. I like horses. I used to ride when I was a child before my parents died. Would you like to ride again? I could teach you if you are rusty, or you could just take out one of the gentler horses." The offer delighted Jessica. "I would love that." Over the next weeks, riding became Jessica's favorite activity. Quinn gave her a sweet-tempered bay mare named Rosie, and Jessica spent hours riding through the ranch property, exploring the creek beds and valleys, feeling more free than she ever had in her life. One afternoon in late January, Jessica returned from a ride to find Quinn working on repairs to the barn. He had taken off his coat despite the cold, and she could see the muscles in his arms and back working as he hammered. She found herself staring, appreciating the strength and grace of his movements. He looked up and caught her watching. Their eyes met and something passed between them, a spark of awareness and attraction that neither could deny. "Good ride?" Quinn asked, his voice slightly rough. "Very good. Rosie and I went all the way to the north pasture. That is a fair distance. You are becoming quite the horsewoman." Jessica dismounted and led Rosie to the barn. Quinn came to help her unsaddle the mare, and they worked together in comfortable silence. But Jessica was acutely aware of his presence, of the warmth radiating from his body, of the way his hand brushed against hers when he reached for the brush. That night, Jessica lay in her small room and admitted to herself what she had been trying to deny for weeks. She was falling in love with her husband. The realization both thrilled and terrified her. After Frederick, she had not thought herself capable of love or trust, but Quinn had proven himself different in every way. He had given her freedom, respect, and kindness without asking anything in return. He had been patient and gentle, never pushing, never demanding. And somewhere along the way her heart had begun to heal, but did he feel the same? He had married her as a business arrangement, a partnership. What if his feelings had not changed? What if he still saw her only as a housekeeper and partner, not as a woman he could love? Jessica agonized over the question for days. Then one evening in early February, everything came to a head. They had just finished dinner, and Jessica was washing the dishes while Quinn dried. It had become their routine, working together in the kitchen, and Jessica treasured these quiet moments of companionship. "Jessica," Quinn said suddenly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. Are you happy here? With this life with me?" Jessica set down the plate she was washing and turned to face him. "Yes, very happy. Why do you ask?" "Because I need to know if you would want things to change between us." Jessica's heart began to pound. "Change how?" Quinn set down the towel and took a step toward her, his hazel eyes intense. "I know we married for practical reasons. I know we agreed to be partners, nothing more. But Jessica, I cannot pretend anymore that my feelings have not changed. I have fallen in love with you." Jessica could hardly breathe. "You have, completely and utterly in love. I love your strength and your kindness. I love the way you laugh when you think no one is listening. I love watching you ride across the ranch with your hair coming loose from its pins. I love everything about you, and I am hoping, praying, that maybe you might feel something for me too." Tears spilled down Jessica's cheeks. "I do. I love you too, Quinn. I have been so afraid to say it, afraid you would not feel the same." Quinn closed the distance between them and gently cupped her face in his hands, wiping away her tears with his thumbs. "Can I kiss you?" "Yes," Jessica whispered. "Please." His kiss was gentle and reverent, nothing like Frederick's harsh, demanding kisses. Quinn kissed her like she was precious, like she was cherished, and Jessica felt the last walls around her heart crumble. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. "I have wanted to do that for months," Quinn admitted, "but I did not want to rush you or make you uncomfortable." "I am not uncomfortable. I am happy." Jessica smiled up at him. "Kiss me again." He did, and this time Jessica wrapped her arms around his neck, deepening the kiss, showing him without words that she was ready for more, that she trusted him completely. That night, they did not retreat to separate rooms. Instead, Quinn carried Jessica to his bed, and they came together with tenderness and passion, building something beautiful from the ashes of Jessica's pain. Quinn was patient and gentle, making sure she felt safe and loved every moment, and Jessica discovered that intimacy could be wonderful when it was shared with someone who truly cared. Afterward, lying in Quinn's arms with her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat, Jessica felt complete in a way she never had before. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what? For giving me freedom, for giving me respect, for teaching me that love does not have to hurt." Quinn tightened his arms around her and kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for trusting me enough to let me love you. You have made my life complete, Jessica. I will spend every day trying to make you as happy as you have made me." The months that followed were the happiest of Jessica's life. Spring came to Colorado, bringing wildflowers and new calves, and Jessica threw herself into ranch life with enthusiasm. She learned to help with the cattle, to mend fences, to keep the ranch accounts. Quinn taught her everything he knew, treating her as a true partner in every sense. But it was not all work. Quinn made sure they had time for pleasure too. He took her on picnics in the mountains, taught her to fish in the creek, and on clear nights they would sit outside and count the stars while Quinn told her their names and the stories behind the constellations. In May, Jessica realized she was pregnant. She told Quinn one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "We are going to have a baby," she said, taking his hand and placing it on her still flat stomach. Quinn's face went through a series of emotions: surprise, joy, wonder, and finally a touch of fear. "Are you happy about this?" he asked. "I am terrified and overjoyed. Are you the same? I want this child so much, but I am afraid too. My mother died in childbirth with my youngest sister. And you know what happened to Frederick's first wife?" Jessica had not known Quinn's mother had died that way. She squeezed his hand. "I am strong and healthy, and we will make sure I have the best care possible. We will go to Denver for the birth," Quinn decided. "There are better doctors there and a hospital. That is months away. Let us not worry about it yet. For now, let us just be happy." Quinn pulled her into his arms. "I am happy. You and this baby, you are everything I ever wanted." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the summer and into fall. Jessica bloomed with health, and Quinn doted on her, insisting she rest more and work less, though Jessica refused to be treated like an invalid. In November, they traveled to Denver as planned. Quinn rented a room near the hospital and stayed with Jessica through the long hours of labor, holding her hand and encouraging her when she was sure she could not go on. Their son was born on a snowy evening in late November, healthy and howling. Quinn held the baby with tears streaming down his face. "He is perfect," he said. "You are perfect. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you for this gift." They named him Matthew Quinn Vance, and he became the center of their world. They returned to the ranch in early December, and Quinn proved to be a devoted father, getting up with the baby at night and changing diapers without complaint. "I never thought I would be this happy," Jessica said one evening, watching Quinn rock Matthew to sleep. "After Frederick, I thought my life was over, but you gave me a new beginning. You gave me freedom and respect, and somewhere along the way, you gave me love." Quinn laid the sleeping baby in his cradle and came to sit beside Jessica. "You gave me those things too. Before you, I was just a man building a ranch. Now I have a family, a purpose beyond just surviving. You and Matthew, you are my everything." The years that followed brought changes and growth. Quinn's ranch prospered, growing from 200 head of cattle to over 1,000. They built a larger house, one with separate bedrooms for the children that followed Matthew, a daughter named Sarah born in 1879, and twin boys, Daniel and Thomas, born in 1881. Jessica became known throughout the county as a skilled horsewoman and rancher. She attended town meetings with Quinn, spoke her mind on issues affecting the community, and helped other women who found themselves in difficult situations, offering them work on the ranch or connecting them with resources. Quinn never tried to control or diminish her. Instead, he encouraged her to be fully herself, to use her gifts and strengths to take up space in the world. Their marriage remained a partnership of equals, built on mutual respect, trust, and deep, abiding love. One spring evening in 1885, Jessica and Quinn sat on the porch of their home, watching their children play in the yard. Matthew was nearly 8 now, tall and serious like his father. Sarah was a whirlwind of energy at 6, and the twins were tumbling over each other like puppies. "Do you remember the day we met?" Jessica asked, leaning against Quinn's shoulder. "Of course. You stepped off that stagecoach looking terrified and determined. I thought you were the bravest woman I had ever seen." "I was not brave, I was desperate. You were both. And you still are, though now you are desperate for different things, like getting the twins to settle down before bedtime." Quinn grinned as one of the boys let out a whoop of laughter. Jessica laughed. "They are your sons. They have your energy. And Sarah has your stubborn streak." "I am not stubborn." "No. Who insisted on helping with the spring roundup when you were 8 months pregnant with the twins?" "That was different. I was perfectly capable." Quinn pulled her close and kissed her temple. "You are capable of anything you set your mind to. That is one of the many reasons I love you." Jessica turned to look at the mountains, now familiar friends after 9 years in Colorado. She thought about the terrified young woman who had arrived in Colorado City, expecting a life of rules and restrictions, and she marveled at how wrong she had been. Instead, she had found freedom, respect, partnership, and a love deeper than anything she had imagined possible. "I love you too," she said, turning back to Quinn. "Thank you for giving me the freedom to become the person I was meant to be." "Thank you for choosing to become that person with me," Quinn replied. As the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, Jessica felt profound gratitude for the unexpected path her life had taken. She had come west expecting confinement and found liberation. She had married expecting duty and found passion. She had braced herself for control and found respect. Most importantly, she had discovered that love, real love, did not cage or diminish. It freed and elevated. It respected and honored. It gave space to grow while providing roots to anchor. Years continued to pass in a rhythm of seasons and growth. The children grew and thrived under the loving guidance of both parents. Matthew developed a gift for working with the horses, eventually taking over that aspect of the ranch. Sarah proved to have a head for numbers and began managing the ranch accounts when she was just 14. The twins were inseparable, always exploring and getting into harmless mischief. Quinn and Jessica grew older together, their love deepening with each passing year. They faced challenges, droughts that tested the ranch's resources, harsh winters that took their toll on the cattle, the inevitable struggles of raising 4 strong-willed children. But they faced everything together, as partners, as equals, as lovers. Quinn never once raised his voice in anger to Jessica or the children. He believed in talking through problems, in listening as much as speaking, in respecting even the smallest person's dignity and autonomy. The children grew up knowing they were valued and heard, that their opinions mattered, that love was about freedom rather than control. When Matthew turned 18 in 1894, he announced his intention to marry Lucy Foster, the daughter of a neighboring rancher. The wedding was held at the ranch, a joyous celebration with half the county in attendance. Jessica watched her son pledge his life to his chosen partner and saw in his eyes the same respect and devotion she saw in Quinn's eyes when he looked at her. "We did something right," Quinn whispered to her as they danced at the reception. "We did everything right," Jessica replied. Sarah followed her own path, deciding at 20 that she wanted to attend college in Denver to study business. It was an unusual choice for a young woman in 1899, but Jessica and Quinn supported her completely, proud of her ambition and confidence. The twins eventually took over the day-to-day running of the ranch, working in perfect harmony as they always had, allowing Quinn and Jessica to slow down a bit in their 60s. One autumn evening in 1906, Jessica and Quinn celebrated their 30th wedding anniversary. All 4 children had returned to the ranch for the occasion, bringing grandchildren who filled the house with noise and laughter. After everyone had gone to bed, Jessica and Quinn walked hand in hand to the creek, where they had spent so many peaceful hours over the years. 30 years, Jessica said, watching the moonlight dance on the water. "It has gone so fast." "The best years of my life," Quinn said. "Every single one of them. Do you remember what you said to me when you proposed? You said I would have freedom, that I could come and go as I pleased, speak my mind, make my own choices. I remember. You kept every promise, Quinn. You gave me more than freedom. You gave me wings." Quinn turned to face her, his hair now silver but his hazel eyes still bright. "And you gave me purpose and joy and a family beyond my wildest dreams. You took a chance on me, on us, and you made something beautiful out of it." "We made something beautiful together," Jessica corrected. "That is what partnership means." They stood there by the creek, 2 people who had found each other against the odds, who had built a life based on mutual respect and love, who had proven that marriage could be something other than ownership and control. "I would choose you again," Jessica said softly. "1,000 times over I would choose you." "And I would choose you," Quinn replied, pulling her close. "My brave, brilliant, beautiful partner, my everything." They kissed under the stars, the same stars they had counted together 3 decades ago, and Jessica felt the same flutter of joy she had felt the first time Quinn had kissed her. Some things, the best things, did not fade with time. As they walked back to the house, arm in arm, Jessica reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought her here. She had come to Colorado Territory in 1876, expecting rules and restrictions, expecting to live a diminished life under the control of a harsh husband. Instead, she had found Quinn Vance, a man who believed in freedom and respect, who had given her space to become fully herself while standing beside her as an equal partner. Their love story was not one of grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was built on the quiet foundation of daily respect, of choices made and promises kept, of freedom given and trust earned. It was a love that had grown slowly and surely like the cottonwoods by the creek, roots deep and branches wide. And it was, Jessica thought as Quinn squeezed her hand and smiled at her in the moonlight, the most beautiful love story she could have imagined. The ranch continued to thrive under the twins' management, and Quinn and Jessica settled into a comfortable rhythm of helping where needed but mostly enjoying their grandchildren and each other. They took long rides through the property, recounting memories and making new ones. They read together by the fire in winter and sat on the porch in summer, watching the mountains change colors with the seasons. When Quinn died peacefully in his sleep in 1912, at the age of 68, Jessica was beside him, holding his hand as she had held it through 36 years of marriage. Her heart broke, but it was a clean break, one without regret or bitterness. They had loved each other fully and well. They had built something lasting together, and though she would miss him terribly, she was grateful for every moment they had shared. Quinn was buried on a hill overlooking the ranch, with the mountains he had loved as a backdrop. The whole county turned out for the funeral, testimony to the respect he had earned through decades of honest dealing and kindness. Jessica lived another 8 years, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, still riding Rosie's descendants across the ranch property, still fierce and independent even in her 70s. She told her grandchildren stories about their grandfather, about the man who had believed in freedom and respect, who had loved her without trying to own her. When Jessica passed in the spring of 1920, she was laid to rest beside Quinn on that hill overlooking the ranch they had built together. Their headstone bore both their names and a simple inscription that their children chose: partners in life, equal in love. The ranch stayed in the family for generations, and the story of Jessica and Quinn became family legend, passed down as an example of what marriage could be when built on the right foundation. They were remembered not for wealth or fame, but for the quiet revolution they had enacted in their own lives, proving that love and respect could coexist, that partnership was stronger than ownership, that freedom and commitment were not opposing forces but complementary ones. In the end, Jessica Marlowe Vance had found exactly what she had not known to look for: a man who saw her as an equal, a love that liberated rather than confined, and a life that allowed her to be fully, completely herself. She had expected rules and restrictions, but instead found freedom and respect, and in finding them, she had discovered what it truly meant to be loved.